All right, and we are live with episode number 50 of Mentor Minutes. I started these sessions about 10 weeks ago as an opportunity for leaders around the world to exercise their leadership muscle. So we take questions from real leaders from around the world dealing with real situations. We apply the principles and the theories behind leadership to try to get them over their challenges and obstacles. Now, the benefit for everybody tuning in, whether you have a question or not, is it gets you thinking about the right way to lead and how to overcome issues. And that makes it easier for you to apply it in your work. Your situations will not exactly mirror other individuals and their particular struggles, but there will be correlations. And who's to say you're not going to end up dealing with a similar issue down the road? You'll have kind of a canned response you've already given some thought to. So if you want to get better at anything, you need to practice it. If you want to get better at, something kind of intellectual, then you need to study it a little bit more. And this is just another method for you to study leadership and get better and strengthen that leadership muscle. So for those of you that are tuning in late that missed the live session over on Facebook, maybe you're listening on my podcast, maybe you're listening over on YouTube, or you're just catching it on Facebook on a replay, you can always ask questions. You can drop down into the comment section. I will get them on the next episode of Mentor Minutes. If you want to email me at cm@cameronmorsey.com or direct message me through Facebook, I can keep you anonymous if you want to keep yourself anonymous, and we'll just kind of share the learning as we all deal with some of these challenges that are out there. Luke, always good to see you here right off the bat. And for those that want to put in a question late, that's actually where I got these questions from yesterday's episode, just a couple that I missed from Pat. And that is, the first one was, what do you think about a reward-based motivation to achieve metrics? I like reward-based motivation. I'm a competitive person by my very nature, and a good subset of your employees are likely have that kind of competitive atmosphere or feeling as well in how they like to work, and that you always like to have some sort of goal or some sort of reward. So I have no problem with it. I do like mixing it up a little bit. What the issue with rewards as far as motivation is concerned is they also become an entitlement if you keep them on for longer and longer. So mix them up. Maybe, in regards to sales, maybe you are incentivizing a certain thing in sales. Maybe you're incentivizing upsells. Maybe you're incentivizing customer service scores, something along those lines. Looking at those different correlations. But I do like to mix it up. Now, where people make a mistake in regards to motivation and rewarding that motivation and coming up with those rewards and prizes and contests and that sort of thing is, those are all very short-term ways of motivating a staff. You want to try to move to a long-term sort of motivation. So asking your team, what is it that motivates them? Looking at them and saying, what is it that motivates them? When is Cameron smiling and full of energy when he's out on the sales floor? Is it when he's working with particular individuals? Is it when he's super busy? Ask yourself these questions, ask the team those questions so that you can try to manage and motivate a little bit better based on those long-term motivating factors. The other thing with motivation, we talked about it in yesterday's episode as well, and that is, if you want to motivate your team more, start engaging with them more. Ask them more questions. What do you, instead of telling them what to do, say, what do you think we should do in this particular area? What do you think we should do to reach this particular goal? Engage them, develop a sense of ownership, and that in itself becomes motivating. And again, the more you interact, the more likely you are to be able to tap into those long-term motivational feelings and triggers that each of your individual's employees has. So the more you know people, the better it's going to be as far as motivating them in the long term. Again, to get back to the original question, don't have a problem with rewards motivation, but it's always a good idea to kind of mix that up. That way that reward doesn't become an entitlement down the road. Eslam, Stephanie, so good to see you both here. The next question was from Pat again, and it was, what questions can I ask to gauge executive management when it comes to their comfort level of flexible autonomy at the field level, allowing independent decision making? So getting to that question of do they empower their team members? You can lead in with the first question, and that is, what do you look for as far as the empowerment that you give the field agents? What are you comfortable with them doing? What are you comfortable with them deciding? So you lead with the larger question that they almost have to answer yes to. Yes, I want to empower the team. All right, that starts it off. And then you can start diving into some more specifics. So we talked about this yesterday in regards to an interview. So if in an interview, it's you flipping that classic questioning technique. Can you tell me about a time where you empowered the team? Can you tell me about a time where you empowered the team and it failed? How did you handle that situation? So that's the easy way in interviews. Now, if you're already with the company, again, I think you start big, you start broad with that. What are your feelings in regards to empowering the field staff, and what level of empowerment do you think they should have? And then you start getting more and more specific into some of the things that you're dealing with and getting a feel for whether they would want you to make those decisions or what would go into them wanting you to make those decisions. All right, what would you need to see for me to be empowered to do that? That might be a nice way of phrasing it as well. Mike, Patty, good to see you both here as well. So as we've had some more people jump on here, if you have any questions, any challenges you're dealing with this week, anything you're not looking forward to, go ahead, drop those questions, those comments, those concerns down in the comment section, and I'll be happy to get to those. And Mike, I'm giving you the shout out, all right? I do have one other question that came in, and I kind of answered it actually through direct message on Facebook, but I did want to address it here, and that is, what do you do when you get fired for no reason? So this particular individual was let go. There was a management change, and quite frankly, I think it was a personality conflict, because every issue that was brought up that was leading to this person being fired, there was always a reason why. There was always more to the story than what it is. So it sounded to me as if management had made the decision, this particular regional manager had made the decision to get rid of this person. And lots of times that does come from personality conflicts. But the employer, of course, can't and shouldn't say that it is a personality conflict that is causing you to get kicked out. So the question is, do you file for, they had a legal form. This is good stuff for everybody to think about. They had a legal form there that says, hey, if you say that you resign, then you get 2 weeks pay, you get, your insurance through the end of the month, that sort of thing. Now the question is can you still file for unemployment? Well, in Nevada, and I'm not a legal expert, so you have to check this out. But in Nevada, if you resign, no, it's almost impossible to get unemployment. And so that was the company's way of getting out of having to pay unemployment, is my theory on this. Again, not a legal expert. So be mindful of that. It's nice to be able to say that you resigned as far as looking for another job, but be careful if you think that you are going to be unemployed for a number of months while you search for a new job, that might not be a route that you want to go, just to have that sort of safety net there. The other question is, should he ask for another interview with HR to dive into those details a little bit more, because he still doesn't understand why he was being let go? My quick answer is no. It's a waste of your time. It's a waste of their time. The issue is they want to get rid of you. And rarely do you ever see a company, and quite frankly, I've never seen a company come back on this and say, we're going to go ahead and let you go. We've prepared paperwork for you to be resigning. But you know what? Now that we've dove into the issues a little bit more, there is no justification in letting you go. A company almost never does that. So unless you're feeling like putting them through the ringer, you're not going to actually get the answers that you want. You're not going to get a change of the decision. All you're going to get is more of the same thing, which is basically little small issues that are easily explained, but they just won't listen to you. And it's tough. I know I'm just kind of throwing that out here, but it's one of those situations that you want to deal with when you get let go unjustly, and many of us do over the course of our careers get let go unjustly. You want some sort of like hearing or something like that, and it's not the sort of environment where you have that sort of thing. So always easier to find a job if you have a job. Yeah, agreed. If they want you to go, you're gone. And Stephanie, that's how I take that particular situation. They want you gone. They're not going to change their mind on that particular thing. And this is another one where for everybody out there that is concerned that they might get let go at some point, look for a job now. As Stephanie says, it's easier to find a job when you have a job already. It takes all that edge off. You're calmer in interviews, that sort of thing. You can be looking for another job and seeing what is out there. You can interview for jobs. You can actually get job offers. It doesn't mean that you have to take them, but you can see what's out there. And it's a good idea if you're stagnant in your position a little bit to see what's out there. It might open up some doors as far as opportunities elsewhere, but it also might get your mind thinking about what you can do within the organization that you're in. I'm a big fan of going that route. Stephanie, thanks for kind of throwing that out there. And Neji has a question that's, how do you manage conflict? And a really good question. Conflict really comes down to two factors, and that is communication and miscommunication and competition. So those are the two things that really create a bunch of conflict, and those are your two umbrellas, shall we say. So there can be personality conflicts that create miscommunication. There can be conflicts where somebody thinks that you are usurping their authority. A lot of times bosses have conflicts with some of their best employees because they feel kind of threatened by that employee. So what you want to do is you want to try to cut through the miscommunication as much as possible, and you want to defuse that any conflict that might be there. So those are the two things that you look for. When you look for a conflict, those are the two root causes, communication and competition. Look to diffuse the competition and look to increase that communication. When you're talking about interpersonal problems between employees in particular, let's say you're leading employees and you have interpersonal problems, it almost always comes down to miscommunication. Almost always. Somebody takes the way somebody said something the wrong way, but that person didn't mean it in that way. Bring the two people in, have a frank conversation that you mediate. Don't let them talk too much unless you are asking them a question. You are the mediator, but you are sorting through this issue. The other thing with managing conflict, and it gets kind of the competition aspect of it, but what I've seen work before, you cut out that miscommunication as much as possible, but you tie to mutual goals. So when you have conflicts on the same team, you reference, hey, we are all here to serve the customer. We all want the workplace to be, nice sunshine and roses. We all want to be successful in our positions. You tie to what everybody is working towards. And when they see that they both have the same sort of goals, that tends to diffuse things as well. So you cut the miscommunication out and you tie to mutual goals. And those are the things that cut at those two main sources of conflict that you're going to deal with. If you have any more, Neji, if you have any specifics, drop down in the comments. We can deal with some specifics, and I can kind of walk you through some scenarios if you'd like in regards to managing conflict, because that's one that you're going to have to deal with over the course of your leadership career at some point or another. Unfortunately, that's just the way it works. Eslam has the next question for us, and it's, in CS, our performance based on customer satisfaction, what can we do when not a good result comes, and how can I deal with management as they only look for numbers, not the reasons? And that's the harsh reality. So I have a background, Eslam, in a customer support environment, and I have some experience with some very detailed surveys that are done. Realize that your turn, first of all, accept the way that it is. All right, what you have there is you have a measure that is not going to be perfect, but it is at least in the ballpark of perfect. So what you want to do is you want to get action focused. Don't get defensive. All right, weak managers get defensive because they have something to defend. All right, my hope is that you put in the proper training, that you put in the proper support for your team. Your team has the right mindset. But even with all of those things in place, you're still going to get some negative results. It's just the law of averages, it's statistics. It's going to happen at some point. And all you want to do is you want to come up with your action plan. So what is it that you do when you get a negative review? Do you post that review up for everybody to see? Maybe you take the names out of it. All right, black out the name so somebody can't go into the customer account and see who it was that actually dealt with that particular individual. But we dealt with this with Extreme Ownership, the book Extreme Ownership. That's what keeps running through my mind. He was asked by his boss in roundtable meetings, hey, what do you need from me? Nothing, we're good. And what happened is when they needed something, he was able to get it because he never asked for it. Everybody always says, oh, I could use this, I could use this. He took complete ownership of it. I want you to take ownership of the issue. Post it up. I want you to talk individually with every single one of the people in your CS department. Maybe you have to farm this out to your supervisors and say, hey, this is the issue. This is what we think could have prevented this from becoming an issue, rightly or wrongly. Again, your customer service agent could have handled everything absolutely perfectly, but for whatever reason, the customer took it the wrong way. That's fine. you can still take actions to make sure that the customer doesn't take things the wrong way. So if you notice that the customer is doing this and this, what we want you to do is one of these three things. So you come up with a game plan, you talk it through to everybody else. But this conversation also gives you a chance to reiterate those things that are most important for a proper interaction for customer satisfaction. It is a way to talk about what is most important. What you talk about regularly is what people are going to deem as most important and is what they are going to take action on. So each one of these negatives becomes something that can be a positive for you from a training perspective. What I would also recommend, Eslam, is because especially since management looks at this all the time, what I would recommend is actually putting this same method into effect for all of the positive things that are out there as well. Have this conversation with each of your team members and say, hey, these are the three positives that we had. We didn't have any negatives last month. It was awesome. These are the three positives, and these are the things that we think led to the positive environment. This is what we want to make sure that we are doing on a regular basis. All right, again, you are talking about it more and more. Your performance is based on customer satisfaction. I want to say there is nothing more important. On Friday, we're going to be going over one of my favorite books, The One Thing by Gary Keller. That is your one thing. That is what everybody should be focused on in your organization, is customer satisfaction. For all of you that are tuning in there, yours might be different. It might be orders shipped, invoices processed. It might be sales. It might be calls answered. Whatever your one thing is, be talking about it regularly and talk about the negatives in the same light as you talk about the positives. It makes those negative conversations easier to have. You already have a template for it, and it makes the positive things more impactful as well. It gives you an excuse to talk about those things. I realize, Eslam, that there is a lot of time that is committed to this. All right, talking to teams individually takes a lot of time. But what else is your higher priority? You want to be dealing with customer satisfaction. Use the tools that the organization has to really drive it forward. Look for those key metrics. Here's the other thing that you want to do, and then I'll move on to the next topic because I'm kind of transporting myself a decade ago to when I dealt with this with a customer service department as well. The other thing that you want to do is you want to engage the team. What do you think we could do to improve customer satisfaction? Okay, so we had this issue. Are there any ideas that you have to address this that could have prevented this from being something that is an issue? All right? So bring the team into that to have them take some ownership, and it gives just more heads behind a particular issue. And the more brains you have working on a problem, the more likely you are to be able to come up with some sort of solution for it. Hope that helps, Eslam. If you have any other questions, like I said, that's my wheelhouse, and happy to talk to you about it. Ala, good to see you here. Always good to see you here. Need to be open and honest with conflict communication. Yeah, Kelly, and that's just it. That cuts out the issues of miscommunication is when you have that open and honest communication. So getting into the root, and that actually kind of inspires me to talk about the root of conflict and the root of that communication. Do you have a structure in your department for open and honest communication? Are you meeting with everybody? You know, are you having weekly stand-ups, daily stand-ups, weekly team meetings, monthly team meetings? You know, this happened at one point in my career where we hadn't been having monthly, maybe actually bi-weekly is what we ended up doing, team meetings, and there was interpersonal conflict. There were just problems that were being created. And what happened is that first meeting was an hour and a half long, and we dealt with a bunch of things, and were able to give people a perspective and an understanding of what the other side was dealing with. And it diffused a ton of the conflict in the department. And then we had them on a bi-weekly basis, and that diffused so much of what was going on. And it allowed the team another channel and another means of having that communication. It's different having a one-on-one discussion with somebody versus having a team discussion about the issue. And so that's another way of doing that. What can you do to mix up your communication with team members so that they feel freer to have that open and honest communication? Love that comment, Kelly. Thanks for throwing that out there. And everybody else out there, I love it. I don't pretend to have all of the answers here. So if you have a comment, a thought in regards to a question that's going on, by all means, drop it down into the comment section for everybody to hear, and it'll just inspire better conversation for us here. Jody has our next question, and it's how do you deal with a manager who has one set of rules for his favorites and another set of rules for the others? Um, Here, I'm going to drink, have a little sip of water and think about that one. That's a good one. What I want to tie it back to is I want to tie it back to core principles. It's going to be hard. First of all, it's hard to change, and that's kind of the route that I was thinking about there. It's hard to change that leader's mindset. All right, you have a poor leader ahead of you. If they're playing favorites, that's one of the most detrimental things you could ever do to a department and to teamwork within that department is playing favorites. Now, when you back that up by having multiple favorites and having a different set of rules for them, then that becomes even more problematic. Part of what I'm looking at is how to deal with it more effectively. There's not going to be a solution. I hate to say it, Jody, there's not a solution to it. You could take this to HR, you could take this to their boss, but what that's going to do is create more animosity. And I know that's supposed to be the textbook response to it. You're supposed to take it to a higher power when you see a problem. And maybe your organization that functions correctly, but I've rarely ever seen it where that doesn't create more problems for you down the road. The part of what you want to get into is you want to create a dialogue with your boss a little bit more. So make sure that you're talking to them more. You're talking through issues. You're getting ahead of issues and you're explaining the why to them. Now, I talk a lot about leaders explaining the why to your team members. Why do we do a particular thing? Why is it important? But that also goes up the food chain in an organization as well. So get ahead of some of those things and say why it's important for people to show up on time. Find a way to mix that in. Why it's important to do a certain thing a certain way. So, it may be that you're addressing a particular issue in regards to sales. Well, the reason that we handle it this way and the reason that I'm always careful to handle it this way is because of this. And so perhaps you can erode some of those separate sets of rules by getting clear and making it clear to the boss the reason why it's done a particular way. Now, if, it's tough when you have a boss that isn't fair. And I don't want to go down the route of saying look for another job or something along those lines. I don't want to go down that route. That's always available to you. But really try to communicate the why and create more of a dialogue with your boss. Now, the other way to get in a discussion with your boss in regards to things is to make sure that you're talking about things that they care about. All right? The reason that this is important, that everybody shows up on time, that we handle sales in a particular way, is because it creates a template so everybody understands it. And when everybody understands it, we have more sales, more efficiencies within the department. The budget comes down if they're worried about the budget. But tie it to those metrics, sales metrics, budget metrics, cost metrics, customer satisfaction. Tie it to those things and why doing things a certain way is important. So you're not going to be... What you're going to be trying to do is actually erode some of those special rules for those other individuals and wither that just a little bit with solid logic and solid reasoning. And the way you do that is in the way that you communicate to your boss. It's a tough situation, Jody. I don't want to say I don't have a good answer for that, but it is a really tough situation because you don't have the authority to make that boss be fair necessarily. If you do with HR and their boss, then great. That's great. If you have skip level meetings, it's something to bring up to their boss. But most organizations don't have a dynamic that's suitable for that. So try to erode that out with the reasoning and the logic behind it by creating more dialogue with your boss and more communication. Also really hard. I like this. Stephanie kind of cuts right to the chase. It's also really hard to work for someone dumber than you. That boss is often suspicious that you are out for their job even when you're not. The thing about that, Stephanie, that I would comment on that is that every leader has weaknesses. And I'm not discounting that boss may be very, very much dumber than you are. But every boss has weaknesses. They might not be great at presentations. They might not be good at dissolving conflict, some of the things that we're talking about here. Your role as their employee is to make them better. So you're there to magnify their strengths and you're there to minimize their weaknesses as much as possible. So think about that. What is your boss's weakness and how can you help them to overcome it? Or how can you support them in a way to where it isn't a weakness at all to begin with? So look for those ways. If you have a dumb boss, and I'll use the example of a new boss that comes in who might be brilliant, but is new to the industry. And so for all practical purposes, they're stupid at this particular point. What can you do to bring them up to speed, to help them to understand what's going on at the ground level, to bring more knowledge to them? That's your role as an employee, as a good employee, is to look to minimize those weaknesses as much as possible. Now, when a boss is playing favorites, as we just spoke about, maybe that's discussing how playing those favorites and why those policies that everybody else is held accountable to are important for the entire team and how they tie to what the boss is looking to accomplish and how they are measured. Let the rest go, and that's just it. And you know, that's a great point to it too. I appreciate everybody kind of jumping in on this one, because it's a tough situation. And that was one of the things that I was thinking about commenting on, and that is getting back to kind of first principles for you. Why is it that you're there? What is important to you on the job? Why is it that you do what you do? What fulfills you in that role? And stay focused on doing a great job. Yes, it is frustrating that other people aren't held accountable for their actions the way that you are. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be holding yourself accountable for those actions. And that can be something that helps out. Marici Vander, I love the name. I can't say it worth beans, but I love that name. Has the next question for us, and it's, how do you deal with a manager that has different sets of rules and tends to be racist? You know, we've kind of been talking through having that different set of rules and discussing with them the reasons why some of those rules are, creating that dialogue, talking things through in ways that they understand, controlling what you can control. As mentioned before, when we start getting into racism, when we start getting into sexism, the question then becomes, especially if it has an effect on you personally, the question then becomes, do you want to stay underneath that boss? So the two reasons to leave a job are you're not learning anything, all right? That's key, is if you're not learning anything, then you need to bounce. But if you don't have any upward mobility as well, then that can be another reason. So those are the two factors. Are you learning and growing as a leader or in your skill sets in general? And do you have that upward mobility? If you have both of those, then stay in the job. But if in the case of racism or sexism in particular, then you owe it to yourself to bounce out of that particular job. And it's in the exit interview, you can bring up all of the details. If you have a bunch of people that can reference things, I guess I'll get into the kind of the HR aspects of that too. When you look to bring something, when you do look to go over your boss's head and you look to bring something to HR and you look to bring something to their boss, there's a couple of things that you want to do. A, you want to have more than one incident of it occurring. I mean, I hate to put that out there, but that's the first excuse that's going to be brought up is, well, that was just one time. Now, if it's a bad incident, then one time's enough. But they're going to say, you know, oh no, that was just one time. So you need to have multiple instances. And the other thing is to actually have multiple people, because the second thing that's always brought up as a baloney defense is, well, that's just Cameron. Or that's just Marie. That's just what that is. It's not anybody else. Well, no, I've got 2 or 3 incidences and I've got 2 or 3 people that can back me up on that. When you do that, then you're in a position of strength. So that's when you really look to go to HR, to go over their head. If you're going to do that, have your ducks in a row and have those things in place. But you can deal with that different set of rules as best you can by trying to cover for that weakness in the boss, you know, bring them around a little bit, dealing with it yourself and just controlling what you can control. When you start bringing in the racist tendencies, then that becomes a little bit of a, you know, something that causes me a little bit of concern as far as maybe bouncing out of that particular job. Good question, Marie. If there's anything more on that, drop it down in the comment section and we can keep bringing that up. Yeah, and Denise, yeah, you take that to HR. That's where you take that, but you also take it with as much backup as you can. If other people have heard that comment, bring those people along. All right, that's what helps make sure it drives that nail in the coffin. Now, don't get me wrong. Maybe the HR department is all on board with this sort of thing and it's going to be addressed the proper way. You probably have a feel for that. But it always is beneficial to bring more than one person and more than one incident. That's really helpful. Customers, Stephanie brings up a great one here, and that is, it's impossible to please everyone. Customer is not always right, but the customer is still the customer. And without customers, we're all out of business. And that can be the case. You know, the customer is not always right. Flat out, they aren't. But they, you know, to Stephanie's point, they are the customer. What I also like to bring up in this is it's impossible to please your entire staff too. in your leadership role, it's not always, every decision you make is going to have somebody who is affected negatively by it for some reason. You could give everybody pay raises, and for some reason 5% of the populace would be pissed off because you gave pay raises because it wasn't enough, for instance, or something along those lines. So you can't please everybody, and you aren't going to get 100. If you had 100% customer satisfaction, I'd almost be concerned. There's something wrong with the metric at that point, because there's always areas of improvement, and you're always going to have those interactions that don't go particularly well for whatever reason. The customer can have a bad day. Your employees can have a bad day. And if that's not showing up, then it's not helping you to address the problem. So I actually want to hear, hey, don't get me wrong, I want to have great customer satisfaction, but I do want to catch some of that negative because I do want to continuously be improving the organization, and that's what I'd be looking for as well. Great comment, Stephanie, love it. Irene, good to see you here. Leonard has a question. I have to say, asking him for advice, but didn't get a response. Leonard, I didn't get anything unless you just sent it within the last half hour, 45 minutes. I didn't get anything. So maybe if you send it again, direct message me on Facebook, or you can just email me, cm@CameronMorrissey.com. And I'll make sure to check any spam or junk mail if I didn't get it that way as well. But no, I didn't see anything, Leonard. Sorry about that. But I think conflict manage according to cultural and understand your employee, and that gets to it. Neji, when you talk conflict, you talk that misunderstanding is that communication aspect of things. When you have different cultures, which many people have, we certainly have it stateside here, where we're bringing together a whole bunch of cultures into this melting pot. You have a bunch of different backgrounds, and I'm a big fan of having a diverse set of backgrounds, of skill sets, of cultures, because I think that helps round everybody out and build the biggest foundation to build off of. But that also does require communication so that people understand what's a cultural thing versus what's a personal thing. And so the more you understand and the more you create those opportunities for communication, the better you're going to understand people, and the better people are going to understand each other, and that diffuses conflict in and of itself. Thanks, but you still have a lot of experience, and I know we don't have much time now, but what about a set day for CS to deliver it all, please? Oh, yes. I'd prefer to handle it, whatever is on your mind, as opposed to me getting up on a soapbox and talking about customer support and talking about running reservation centers, sales centers, call centers, that sort of thing. I prefer to handle it, more specifically. What are some of the concerns that you have out there? And you'll see me, Aslam, you hit me with a good question like the one above, and you'll see me kind of go off on it just a little bit as I tap into some of that experience. But I'd rather handle the specifics as opposed to the generalities, because then you can apply those things in your work, as opposed to me just going on 10 different things and you lose 8 of them while you focus on the 2 things over the next month. Kale has our next question, and that is, how would you address an employee who is an excellent employee in every way besides their attitude? I have one that is very negative, complains constantly about the job, and brings others down. How can I change his perspective or help him be more positive at work? So, Kale, what I'd do is I'd handle this directly as much as possible. Just cut through it all and handle it directly. And I'd bring this person in, Kale, and I'd say, hey, Cameron, I'll play the part of the employee. Cameron, your performance is absolutely fantastic. You've got all the sales numbers. But I'd like to know, is there anything going on in your personal life or professionally that we could do better? Because what I see is a lot of negativity. I see you bringing down, those around you, and I know based on your performance that shouldn't be the case, but is there anything going on? So throw it out to them. Is there something going on that they need to let you know? Maybe it's a personal issue. Maybe they don't like particular supervisors, teammates. Maybe they don't like the way that the company handled something 6 months ago, and you need to explain it. It could be that something along those lines is there, but open it up for them to talk about that with you. All right. Now, what often happens in these cases, unless you have regular kind of personal conversations with your employees, is you're going to get, oh no, nothing's going on. I'm surprised that you see me being negative. They kind of just deflect it. They get defensive. They don't talk about it, whatever it is. Okay. Well, I have seen in this case, and what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to just work on this. So you give them one specific thing to work on, not a whole bunch, one specific thing. So the easy one that pops up to mind is when you see a problem or you have a question in the way that or the organization is handling this, I'd appreciate it if you'd bring it to me. Let me try to explain it to you. Okay, we can diffuse it right there. So if you have an issue, if you see something wrong, you see something that doesn't make sense, then bring it to me and I'd like to handle it for you. Or I'd like to at least be able to try to explain it. It may be that that's the case and you disagree with it, and that's fine, but we can at least talk it out. So you give them one thing, okay? So have the conversation, notice, tell them you've noticed a certain behavior, that it isn't necessarily in line with what you see as far as performance is concerned, and what that might be. Is there anything going on that you can help with that you would explain that? Then give them one particular action, okay? Just one. Then what you're going to do is you're going to follow up in a couple of weeks and say, hey, Cameron, how's it going? Da, da, da. Whatever. I still see you being a little bit negative. Anything with that. And what you're doing is you're giving, and then you give them the second thing that they need to work on. What you're doing is you're going to give them 3 bites at that apple, okay? You need to be persistent in this. So if you want somebody to give you feedback that they've never given you before, you're going to need to give them a few bites at the apple. And this goes for your boss as well. If you need to get an idea across to your boss or you want something from your boss, give them 3 bites at the apple. Again, you're following up 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later. And you're doing that every time. So you're not pestering them about it, but it is an issue that's coming up. And so maybe by the 3rd time they can actually tell you, yeah, well, you know what, I've been having problems with such and such at home. It may be something that's completely not work related. Or, I'm just really frustrated. My vacation got turned down last summer and I didn't get to see, it can be one particular incident, and just unburdening themselves can often turn that around. But you won't know if you don't have that upfront conversation with them. So reference the behavior, reference some specifics. This is not a punitive conversation that you're having with them, Kale, but bring them in and see if you can work with them on things. But have one thing that they can focus on and work on, and then that gives you a chance to follow up with that 2 or 3 weeks down the road, another thing, and then follow up another 2 or 3 weeks down the road. And hopefully that can turn it around. Let me know if that wasn't clear for you, and I'll kind of bring it out just a little bit more. And let me know how that turns out too, how that conversation. I like to hear, everybody that's out there, I like to hear what happens when you took action on something and where that went well and where that didn't go well, so we can improve it even more. Andy's got our next question. Jose says he wants to bring his family to my pool for the day since he cleans it. How do I handle that? The answer would be no. Keep that clear personal difference. I have a pool in my house here in Las Vegas, and no, that's not appropriate. He can bring his family if they're cleaning it, but no, you keep that clear separation between your professional and your personal. That'd be how I would handle it. Hey, if you want to have a personal relationship with Jose, then fine, go ahead, that's fine. If your employee loved you every day of the week, you're not doing your job right, in my opinion. Yeah, Kelly, it is, darn it, I'm going to mess up the Colin Powell quote. Pleasing everybody, the nuts and bolts of it is pleasing everybody is a sign of mediocrity. And that's really it. To be able to please everybody, you have to go the middle route on almost everything, which means you're not taking the bold actions that you need to take. And bad days. Yes, thanks, Patty. All right, I am caught up on questions. So if anybody has any questions out there, any other struggles, anything that popped to mind as we were kind of talking things through, I really appreciate Kelly, Stephanie, you guys chiming in there with some comments. I like it when we have a little bit more of a conversation. It rounds things out really nicely, so I really appreciate that. Leonard, glad you liked it, and definitely ping me, Leonard. Direct message, cm@CameronMorrissey.com, and I'll get your question on the next episode, although I'll probably have to tweak it just a little bit to keep it more anonymous. So I'll mix it in there. I'll figure it out. Maybe I'll just respond to you directly. But if you have any questions, always feel free to drop them down in the comments. I'm just here to help, and I'm hoping that these episodes, as we keep carrying on with them, just give you a little bit of exercise of that leadership mind, some extra tips, tricks, tactics that you can use to improve your leadership, improve your organization, and thereby improving your career. That's the entire point behind these, and I will see you for episode 51 tomorrow. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.